Nobody needs reminding of the increasing dangers facing our islands from global climate changes. But we're learning how to cope. We're becoming more resilient. The events that have affected the lives of many thousands are dramatic and emotional, but the lessons learned are encouraging. Our journey will visit the length and breadth of the South Pacific, and we begin in Fiji, where Hurricane Winston left indelible memories, particularly in our younger generation.
Nasivua was the worst one that got hit. There was like a concrete building built by the priest before. 22 people have to congest in there just to stay away from the wind. And all the houses all got swept away during Winston. None of the houses was left up. After Cyclone Winston, all this place where we used to have marine protected areas, loads of the fish have disappeared. Before they used to have the sea level further bit into the sea, but now it's near their houses. At the moment in the village, I'm the only one who have knowledge about this. You have to have a communication structure with the chiefs and the leaders, and they have to gain your trust. Once they trusted you about all this stuff here, they'll be happy to listen to you of the changes. I always tell them, we don't hate changes or developments when it comes in, but we have to do it in the proper channel.
Understanding the threats that climate change poses to human health can help communities work together to lower risks and be prepared. Nabita Laivai of the Fiji Disabled People's Federation believes climate change-related health impacts may affect people with disabilities more than others.
The impacts of climate change in my community is massive, because it is not only for my community but also for the Pacific as a whole. And we also saw it right here in Fiji, as in Cyclone Winston, where you see in Koro and all of the islands, and it's a really big, you could say, problem, as in terms of climate change, whereas it's faced in my community and also in the Pacific.
In terms of Winston, it was. There was a lot of challenges that were faced by people with disabilities. One of the challenges that we saw was that there was lack or no data on persons with disability. That was a big challenge that we see, that when assessments were done, reported on a daily basis, there was actually no data on persons with disability, and we had to advocate through cluster meetings and other partners the importance when they are going out to also capture data on persons with disability, so that it enables those who are providing support, relief actions, that people with disability needs are met.
Perhaps one of the most reassuring factors that people across the world will be aware of whenever disaster strikes is the presence of the Red Cross, the inhabitants of Kiribati among them.
My home is the Pacific. My home is the island of Kiribati. This is my beautiful, beloved home, the home of my ancestors and of my children. It is blessed with the rays of the sun and comforted by the light of the stars. This is the land of my dreams, but my land has scars you need to see.
This is a message from the Red Cross youth of the Pacific. They want you to see the impact of climate change on your Pacific home.
We may be small and full of scars, but we are strong. We are survivors, warriors, protectors of our land, and keepers of our ocean. We are not standing by and watch our people. our home and our land disappear.
We are planting mangroves to protect our people, our homes, and our land from the rising sea. We are making greener choices, doing what we can to reduce our impacts on the earth. We are building walls, trying to protect our homes and communities from the rising sea. We are using our voices, telling our stories, coming together. Do you hear us?
But we need you too. We need your help. We can't do this alone. Climate change is here. We are waiting for you. Time is running out. You need to come home.
Much is said about the vulnerability of the Pacific Islands, their low-lying geography within an ever-rising sea level. New technologies are being implemented in the case of Tuvalu and other atolls in an attempt to combat the excesses of nature.
Tropical Cyclone Pam, that's in 2015, is actually like a wake-up call for most of the technical institution within the government. During TCPAM, we issued the strong wind warnings, and also in the warnings information we gave out, we have some 2 to 3 meters of swells from that direction. But everything were caught by surprise. We didn't expect the unexpected. So we developed that tool, and that's one of a kind tool, software that actually a really powerful tool that using the global models and downscale everything, and also try to predict for each island, for all the 9 islands, this we can predict and put into a threshold on the graphs that we can closely monitor.
At the heart of any extreme event, of course, is the effect that it has on people. If food and water supplies become scarce, as it happened on the Solomon Islands, people are naturally worried and emotions run high.
My worry is that often climate change adaptation programs and projects are too technical and only look at the technical side of things, but they do not include the dangers, for instance, of potential conflict. And Honiara is a good example because Honiara has the problem of these informal settlements, these squatter settlements, where people come from other islands because maybe their islands have become uninhabitable because of the effects of climate change. So they move to the capital city. And as you know, there is rapid urbanization, growth of urban centers all over the Pacific, and this also applies to Honiara. And these settlements are difficult places to live. And this leads sometimes to violence between the members of the communities or to violent riots like we had only last week. So I think when you develop, design an adaptation program or project, you always have to also keep in mind that what the conflict potential is. And you have to have some criteria to develop your program or project in a conflict-sensitive way, so that it does not lead to conflict, but that it makes it possible that people who are the beneficiaries of the project really can continue to live in peace.
The fight to replace fossil fuels is a massive global issue, and so the campaign to increase the use of renewable energy sources is gathering pace, and therefore innovative alternatives are also on the increase.
The Taniyama Trust, which owns the flagship vessel, the 72-foot solar-powered Taniyama, has embarked on a new project this year that is going to see a total of 100 traditionally designed sailing canoes float on our waters by Christmas. All these canoes are 6 meter long, and they can carry up to 4 people and cargo as well with it. And the key feature around these traditionally designed sailing canoes is the fact that they utilize wind as well as paddling as a form of transporting people around the island, as well as to be used for fishing. The key part around this project is around ensuring that as the country starts to form its position on how we start to decarbonize our economy, that we can make a contribution to decarbonizing the economy in the rural communities by providing an alternative to fossil fuels. One of the things that occurs to us with the Voyaging Society is to look at transport forms and to look back into our history and understand what has already worked for us, and to use that as a motivation to help rural communities begin the process of decarbonizing and showing leadership to our communities in the urban centers. One of the things that we're looking at is making sure that the materials that we purchase for these canoes are all locally sourced, that it's not a complicated or complex process, and that this can really be replicated by anybody should they wish to learn. In the process of it, we're thinking through some of the design aspects of these vessels to ensure that we can create 2 or 3 airtight pockets within the hull of the canoe itself and fill them up with empty PET plastic bottles that are filled with air so that it helps with the buoyancy of the vessel. So these are some of the ingenuities, if you will, or things that have been practiced in the past that we're starting to bring back and find use for in this day and age.
Surviving, becoming resilient, and adapting our everyday lives is becoming a necessity, not only on outlying islands, but in our schools, our places of work, and in the marketplace.
When there's flood, the tables are washed away. So what UN Women have brought in the markets, they have replaced the tables we have lost during the floods and cyclones. What UN Women have brought is that UN Women, like before, women used to sleep on the verandas of the markets. So the UN Woman has brought hostels, dormitories for women to sleep there, because mostly women spend the time in the market to run the family well. So like the women are the backbones of the family.
Along with traditional methods of helping us deal with the severe life-changing events, our spirituality is often a backbone to recovery. Post-trauma advice and counseling can also be found in the work of the churches.
There was a breakdown in psychosocial. No one was providing trauma counseling to the communities. So who would be the best person? Other stakeholders would go into the communities and return, but you would always have a church person, a church leader, or those who have been assigned to that community. So that was a way for us to utilize our network, utilize our members on the ground, and then provide support in the process. This is probably something that is also critical when we are identifying, when we do go down and do trauma counseling. How do we first group women, men, young people and children, but also at the same time, some may not openly share their stories or their experiences. And how do you, I think this is a skill, how do I identify that they need their own one-on-one counseling, whether they need session for the whole group to be able to share their experience and then console each other. But I think it's important, it's critically important, apart from not just the church, but in other stakeholders, in going to the communities. Even when we are implementing projects, it's often important, the responses that we get when everyone is sitting in the whole community hall. I think the men are always speaking, but when we separate the groups, the different groups, then you'll hear the different, the women, the young people and the children are speaking from their own experiences, yes.
Building resilience and adaptation should not be a one-sided affair. all stakeholders have much to learn from each other.
Indigenous philosophies and values such as relationality, the value of relationality, has been muted or neglected or suppressed in a climate change narrative. More and more we see the technical, the scientific, very complex notion of climate change. If we need to have effective resilience strategies or resilience approach, we have to consider and we have to understand how Pacific Island people think. When we talk about climate, we don't ask the indigenous communities. We always ask the scientists, or we ask the economists or sociologists, but we never ask those who have experienced cyclones and natural disasters many times of their lives. I'm not talking about neglecting the scientific-based knowledge. Scientific-based knowledge is very important, but indigenous-based knowledge, the philosophies and values, can enhance the scientific-based knowledge.
After a disaster strikes, quick and unbureaucratic help is priceless to those on the ground. In Vanuatu, community activation, together with technological innovation, achieved a lot.
So in Vanuatu, in my work with Oxfam, what we're trying to do is tackle the issue of Vanuatu being consistently ranked as one of the world's most disaster-prone countries. As a country of 83 islands, responding and providing assistance is often logistically heavy, very complicated, very expensive. So what we've tried to do is to look at a way to deliver that assistance faster and at a lower cost, and in a way that allows people to empower their local economies and markets and make a choice in what they need after a disaster so they can recover faster. So that's where we are now in Vanuatu, where we're using blockchain technology and the use of electronic vouchers that are contained in a smart card in order to allow people to avoid carrying cash. They can bring this smart card to any vendor who has a mobile phone and pay for goods. They can also pay for school fees, they can pay for goods at a clinic, and those vendors don't need to keep receipts, don't need to process paperwork. Oxfam pays them directly into their bank accounts very fast, twice a week. So what we wanted to do was create a sustainable approach where we are using local people to think through this approach and adapt it to the country of Vanuatu. We decided to take the freshest youth minds and train them from zero. Train them how to consult communities on how they use money and how we can get cash to them faster after a disaster, and if it would help them and if they could accept it. And that same team of people, of youth, we started out with 27 youth at the beginning. We're also trained to respond to a disaster that happened just at the tail end of our feasibility study. So as they were going around consulting communities on the islands on what they would do and how cash transfers could assist them after a disaster, the volcano started erupting in Ambai. So the Ambai Manaro volcano resulted in the evacuation of at least 11,000 people off the island and the hosting of those people in other islands in Vanuatu. Oxfam did use our field teams, our youth, delivering payments to each one of them 3 months in a row in order to allow them to rehabilitate, recover, rebuild their life. And it was very successful.
It's an ongoing struggle, but if there's an overriding lesson to be learned, it's a simple one. Together, we are stronger.
I agree that youth participation, is very important, and we need more youth in all aspects of decision making, of policy making, of doing the actual work at all levels, national, regional, international. I realize that we're not always included, we're not always given platforms like this, and so I think each one of us, whether a youth or an older person, I think all of us have a role to play in this, especially since the effects of climate change are more pronounced on this part of the world. So, everyday things, maybe not using straws and plastic items, and yeah, I think there's something that all of us can do.
Whatever comes our way, we're learning more and more about ways to deal with difficult events. In Bougainville, peace, security, and a determination to survive dominate their thoughts.
In the autonomous region of Bougainville in Papua New Guinea, you have some atolls, outer islands, low-lying, that are already affected by climate change and where people are forced to relocate to mainland Bougainville. Over the years there have been several programs in place, some working relatively well, some not so good. But one main issue that people who want to resettle from the Cartwoods to mainland Bougainville is the problem of access to land. Because there is no empty land on Bougainville. Most of the land is held by communities. So it's really difficult to get access to land. The Catholic Church has provided some land for resettlers, but it's by far not enough. And previous experiences show that there can also be conflicts between the people who have to resettle and those who are already there, the recipient communities or the destination communities. And these are often conflicts over land, fishing rights, things like that. And this is of course not very nice for the people who have to relocate, but it's also a problem for the resettlement in the communities who are already there, because they also need their land both for subsistence economy and for growing cash crops, cocoa and so forth. So there's not enough land, that's the problem.
Regarding the relocation of Cartwoods, we did a little bit of work with them. That was peace building in 2014. We came to the relocation area, which is in one of the parishes. The relocation actually was done by the Catholic Church. They were relocated because of the rising of the sea level, and the sea level was cutting in the middle of one of the islands, which made a big passage there. First of all, it did not fit out well because where they are relocated, the language is not the same. To my knowledge, I know it is not plenty of families. Maybe it's about only 2 families who have been relocated and are there because the Cartwoods Islanders do not want to leave their island. And what they say is they will sink with their island.